Allow me to take you back a few months ago, when I had just finished eating dinner. I picked up the dirty plates, took them back to the kitchen and routinely picked up the cloth I used to wipe the sides. Unaware of what I was doing, partly because I was on autopilot, I quickly came to the realisation that I hadn't cleaned the cloth because the more I wiped, the dirtier the table got. And it was at this moment that I realised you should never clean a table with a dirty cloth. Now, unless you've had a similar aha moment while cleaning the table, which I highly doubt, allow me to explain each part of the table and what it represents. The table represents my life, and arguably both my life and a good table need a clean every now and then. The cloth is the means by which I choose to clean the table, and I represent nothing other than myself. Very simply, the cloth can either be clean or dirty before I use it to clean the table. If the cloth is clean, then the table will be cleaner as a consequence of me using a clean cloth. On the flip side, if the cloth is dirty, then of course the table is going to end up even dirtier than it was before, if you didn't already notice. So, I can either choose to clean the table, i.e. my life, in a good way or a bad way. Stay with me. Now, the key element of importance here is the cloth. And the fact that I didn't even pause to check whether the cloth was dirty or not represents something I was doing in my life a little bit too much. Something we will call unconscious delegation. Unconscious delegation is when you passively absorb the works and the ideas and the words of others instead of kicking in your own reasoning powers and asking, oh, what do I think about this? In essence, bringing your own thoughts to the table, pun intended. And the thing is, weighing it all up, I can completely understand why we do unconsciously delegate in our lives, because putting the responsibility of making the big life decisions onto other people is very easy. To think actually requires a lot of brain power. For example, let's say I feel like I'm lacking confidence in life. It's much easier for me to sit there and listen to what someone else is telling me to do, rather than actually sitting down with myself, trying to build an element of self-awareness and focus on the immediate things I can do to build my confidence, such as socialize more, go to the gym, or eat healthier. Each book which promised to unlock a hidden potential within me, or each podcast which promised to get my life back on track, was just another tantalising siren beckoning me further into the abyss. And the worst thing about it is I would convince myself, if I could only read this book, then everything in my life would be brilliant, or my whole life would be in order. That would be the end, completion to everything. Or if I could just apply this one principle that this jacked up dude on the internet is telling me to apply to my life, then I'll be fine. I was perpetuating a vicious cycle in which nothing ever got done because I was putting the utility and sovereignty of my life into the hands of someone else who knew nothing about me, and I pretty much knew nothing about them as well. And seeing as we're kind of on the topic of self-improvement, let me get my plants out and we'll go a bit deeper. See, the thing is with the self-help or the self-development industry is it's kind of like the pharmaceutical industry, in the sense that in order for doctors to sell their medicine and these big pharmaceutical companies to get clients, people have to be sick. So you have to feel an inner need to develop yourself and need self-help or this book or to listen to this podcast. And as long as you remain sick, you're always going to be buying into this stuff. And the thing is, self-development itself is actually an untraceable metric. How do you know when you're developed enough that you don't need this stuff? Because the primary goal is to improve your life and your circumstances. How can you calculate how much self-improvement is enough? Will you ever reach that stage where this is enough self-improvement and I don't need to improve anymore? Should you ever get to that place? Probably not. And if you haven't already felt that gnawing urge to complete something more after you've already completed something, allow me to point out a simple truth to you. There's always more you can read about a subject. There's always more you can do to improve yourself. It never ends. And as I've realised in my own life, the tricky thing you run into when you absorb a lot of self-help content is you start to forget that you are your own individual autonomous being with your own set of values and beliefs. Because one of the principles that I really like is a good teacher returns the student to themselves. And the thing is, you want to be careful of any codependence on someone in the sense of, I need this person to rely on in order to feel a certain way about myself or to improve myself. Now look, we all have mentors. We all have people that we aspire to be like, but a good teacher should return you to yourself. I don't think I can say much more than that. And what's worse is you can forget how irritating you can be to other people. Oh my God, check out this podcast and it will absolutely change your life. There's this one principle from this guy, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, whatever, mate. So what is enough? Despite the inherent difficulty that we all share in determining what is enough, the responsibility, as always, falls on the individual. So it's up to you to decide maybe not what is enough, but what is too much and what is too little. And then you use those two metrics as a gauge to find the middle ground. And it's your responsibility to balance your need to always do more and improve yourself with your ability to reflect and judge yourself based on the gain that you've made rather than the gap. So there's this concept, right? There's this concept, right, called the gap versus the gain. And a lot of the times in our success perpetuated society, we always measure ourselves based on the gap between us, where we are right now, and our goals and what we actually want to achieve. And then there's a void in between those two things, because you know where you are and you know where you're not, and you're thinking, oh, I'm not there yet, therefore I can't celebrate or actually appreciate myself. What you want to focus on is the gain. Think about the things, and this actually takes a mental exercise to do. Ooh. So what you want to do is you want to think about the things you've already achieved in life and then reflect on them and use them as motivation to go forward. Because the more you allow yourself to self-celebrate, not all of the time, but the more opportunity you give for self-celebration, you'll actually find out that you have a lot more confidence within yourself and a lot more self-respect. And the last thing here, you want to distinguish between nutritious and non-nutritious information. Nutritious information I would put down to anything that is immediately practical, you understand, and that returns you to yourself whilst upholding your autonomy as an individual to think and bring your own ideas to the table. Non-nutritious information is that shallow, gimmicky, easily won advice that perpetuates this cycle where you have to rely on this other person in order to make your decisions and feel a certain way about yourself. Essentially, it's taking your focus of control and putting it on something that you don't have control over. The words of Al Pacino in The Devil's Advocate have also been ringing around my head in regards to this context, where he said, the worst vice is advice. And seeking advice and counsel from other people, if taken too far, is another debilitating factor for our own reasoning abilities, not just because distinguishing the good advice from the bad advice is quite tricky to do, but because we are incredibly susceptible to other people's comments, wants, desires, needs, and values. And what I mean by that is, have you ever had that moment where you're doing something in life and maybe you're early in the process and you've convinced yourself you're a little bit lost, and then one of your friends is doing something new and exciting, or they've been doing it for a year and you think, oh, that's a good idea. Maybe I'll jump ship and go and do what he's doing. It's mimetic desire where we want what other people want because we see it as socially acceptable. And the thing is, other people's voices stay in our minds long after we've had a conversation with them, just as Seneca points out here. In the same way as people who've been to a concert carry about with them the melody and haunting quality of pieces they've just heard, interfering with their thinking and preventing them from concentrating on anything serious, so the talk of snobs and parasites sticks in our ears long after we've heard it, and it's far from easy to eradicate these haunting notes from the memory. They stay with us, lasting on and on, coming back to us every so often. Whoa. Now, I'm not saying the people you seek advice from are snobs and parasites, contrary to Seneca. All I'm saying is constantly listening to them when you're unsure about something in your life will downplay your own reasoning abilities to make a sound decision. If you pay too much attention to what they're saying, you'll end up like a crab in a bucket. You're scrambling to get out and all of their pincers keep dragging you back down. Now, again, I'm not saying that taking advice is a bad thing. Advice is brilliant when you're ready to hear it. But most of the time, I think in this society, we downplay our own ability to make choices in our life because we're so enamored with what other people are saying. And it's very tantalizing, especially when you see a YouTube short or you see a clip of someone who seems like they know the answer to absolutely everything and they're flawless, but you don't see everything behind the scenes. That's the funny thing. To summarize, I think that seeking knowledge and improving oneself is probably two of the best things that you can do as a human being. The ability to stand where you are and think, I'm not where I want to be at the moment, I need to improve myself. Or I don't know everything I want to know about this topic, therefore I need to learn more. But I think the pursuit of knowledge is only sustainable if it's done from a place of curiosity, fullness, and if we also pause every now and then to question what we're learning and see how we can practically apply it into our own life and turn it into wisdom. To merely remember the sayings of another person and their teachings and then to regurgitate it isn't the best thing, because whether it was Carl Jung or Aldous Huxley, I'm not too sure, said, beware of wisdom you did not earn. When I first came across that saying, I didn't necessarily understand what it meant until I started to realise that there were a lot of conclusions that I thought I reached in my own life until I realised I was just spouting the saying of another person. And the thing is, when you arrive at your own wisdom, when you reach your own conclusion through going through certain experiences in your life, the foundations of the knowledge and the wisdom are deeper and the ground feels more solidified underneath your feet. So what is my approach going forward? So, as a consequence of articulating my thoughts here and in developing a inherent scorn whenever I see a title of "Get your life back on track, build confidence this way, all you need is this one principle and your life will be complete," here are 4 ways that my perspective has changed. One is I aim to approach my learning from a place of fullness rather than emptiness. And then 2, in order to avoid unconscious delegation, whenever I learn something or someone says something that resonates with me, I allow myself to pause and question, what do I think about this? Do I agree? Do I disagree? Number 3, and especially in regards to problem solving, I aim to challenge myself to reach conclusions in my own way and to arrive at my own wisdom before I instantly ask someone else what they would do about it. Because like I alluded to in another video, the best way to make the worst decision sometimes is to ask everyone's opinion. Now, I'm not necessarily aiming this video at decision making. It's more so about arriving at your own wisdom in a general sense. So test yourself. The next time you have to think about something, or the next time you want to figure something out in your life, allow yourself to think, not what would someone else do, not what your role model would do, what would you do? What would your soul instruct you to do? And then number 4, I've started to differentiate between the shallow, gimmicky, nonsense self-help advice from the actual deep wisdom and truths that have stood the test of time. 2,000 years ago, what were people living their life by? What ideas were resonating? And overall, the key is to absorb what is useful, discard what is not, and add what is uniquely your own. Get clean in what?